Howdy, I'm political reporter Alex Samuels, and I want to thank you all for joining us for today's virtual event with the Texas Tribune. With me, I have three women running for seats in the Texas State House: Joanna Cattanach, Celina Montoya, and Akilah Bacy. Ladies, welcome.
Hi.
For the next 30 minutes or so, we'll be discussing their campaigns, their hopes of turning Texas blue, and their legislative priorities if they are elected. But before we get there are a few minor housekeeping things I need to go over, so if everyone could just bear with me for a second. For starters, early voting is underway. Registered Texans who want to cast their ballot early can do so anytime between now and October 30th at their local polling location. And please go to texastribune.org to see a copy of your ballot and to stay up to date with all the news you need to know before headed to the polls. And with that, I'd like to introduce our three panelists. I'll start with Joanna Cattanach, a former journalist turned educator and advocate based in East Dallas. She is running for House District 108, covering Dallas. She also ran for the seat in 2018 when she was narrowly defeated by State Representative Morgan Meyer, who won the seat by roughly 200 votes. Next up, we have Akilah Bacy, a Houston-based civil rights attorney and political activist. She is running for House District 138, covering Houston. She began her legal career as an assistant district attorney in Harris County, and in her current role, her focus is on combating workplace discrimination. Last but not least, we have Selena Montoya, a business owner, political activist, and a lifelong San Antonio resident. She's running for House District 121, covering San Antonio. She also ran for the seat in 2018 when she was defeated by Representative Steve Allison. Ladies, again, thank you so much for being with us today.
Thank you.
Glad to be here.
Thanks for having us.
I'd like to start by giving you each the chance to give a brief overview of your respective races. Ms. Bacy, I'll start with you if that's all right.
All right, of course. Well, I'm glad to be here. We are now, of course, as you all know, towards the end of our first week of early vote. And, what we're seeing are really, really strong, voter turnout in our district, a lot of enthusiasm. And we're also hearing on the ground that a lot of the work that we've been putting in, that you all have been putting in to help us, is really sticking. And voters are out there ready to fight for change. And so, by all accounts, if we keep doing what we're doing and keep our foot on the gas, we're going to take Texas House District 138.
Great. Ms. Montoya?
Thank you. Yes. So here in San Antonio, we're in Northeast Bexar County in District 121. And I think like a lot of places, we're seeing a significant amount of voter enthusiasm. It's sort of a tale of two types of voting, right? You've got lines that are, going out into the street longer than we've seen, ever before. These people who are waiting in line in the heat are really my hero. But we have to remember, too, that this means that we haven't done all we can to make sure that voting is accessible to everyone. And so as we go through this early voting process, please be sure to make a plan. We see that folks are, becoming a little bit, a little bit, trepidatious about going out there. So we want to make sure that we give them the confidence to be out in the polls. I know everyone has been working very hard to make sure that it's a safe process. And there is, like I said, a lot of enthusiasm. And so I hope that we see that there's a positive outcome from that.
Ms. Cattanach?
Well, like everyone, we are seeing some record turnout here in Dallas County. I know it's exciting to see it. Today, I got the opportunity to vote at the American Airlines Center, which is one of the many NBA arenas across the country that is serving as a mega voting center. So that's a totally new experience, and people are intentionally going down there to vote just to get special buttons that the Mavericks have made for voters in Dallas, which whatever it takes to get you to vote, please go do that. But please make no mistake, we are seeing some record turnout on both sides. And we are seeing that in Dallas County happening right now. And so we're, really trying to get the message out to our Democratic base. Please do not stay at home. A line is worth waiting in, and there are many options all across the county and places to vote. You can do so safely, and you can do it quickly from 7 to 7 Mondays through Saturday and 1 to 6 on Sundays.
Got it. Thank you all so much. So Ms. Montoya and Ms. Cattanach, you both ran in 2018 for the same seats you're running for now. I'm curious, what kind of help are you guys getting this year that maybe you weren't getting in 2018?
Well, I mean, I can say, from our perspective, it's like night and day. We ran what was the epitome of a grassroots campaign, right? My mom, my aunt, my husband, writing postcards, knocking on doors, my best friend making calls with me. And it was the power of volunteers and the people in this community who really made sure that people were able to show up for this particular race. But it wasn't just this race that made it notable, right? I mean, these are seats that were won by Beto when he ran his race against Ted Cruz. And so because he was able to show such a significant interest among Democrats throughout the state, we've got these at least 9 seats primed to flip. And I think having the opportunity to at least have one campaign under our belts certainly gives us a little bit more, maybe just experience certainly helps, but I think it also gives us a little bit more perspective, right? I don't think anyone anticipated campaigning during a pandemic. And so having the opportunity to have already knocked on doors, have already made these calls, to talk to these neighborhood groups makes such a big difference. And, Joanna and I met on the campaign trail, back in 2018. And, I'm sure she feels much the same way.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so absolutely. I mean, just to give you an example, Oprah was not calling for our campaigns in 2018. Neither was Willie Nelson. And so that just, sometimes in the midst of all of this, those are those surreal moments that are happening. We literally have 12,000 postcards boxed in our office sent from across the country. And I will tell you this, having run once before and being able to see really that night and day experience, you also see this support. It is routine for me to have people say, thank you for running again. Thank you for sticking it out. Because it matters. It matters to voters that you are willing to stick with them when it's hard. And it's certainly a testament to the kind of resilience that both Selena and I will have in the Texas State House, that if we can make it through 2 election cycles in Texas as out and proud Democrats, and through a pandemic, and through primaries, then we are certainly set up well to handle the next legislative session.
Got it. And I'm curious to both of you, I know you had mentioned, Oprah, Willie Nelson. Are you noticing a lot more outside resources coming into both of your races that you didn't have in 2018?
Yes.
I think, resources are coming from everywhere, right? I mean, and the reality is it's not these giant, $1,200 checks like my opponent is getting from corporate PACs and special interests. These are $5 coming from a teacher in Illinois. It's $7 coming from a firefighter in California, right? These are people who are dealing with real issues every single day, right? They have the same concerns that we do. They're teaching their kids at home like we are. They're trying to work from home. They're trying to tighten their belt. And even in the midst of all that belt tightening and all the sacrifice that so many of these people are doing, they're digging a little bit deeper, right? They're finding those $2, $3, $4 that they can send over. And, I think we've seen this since 2008, right? When Obama started making, sort of inroads in his whole, approach at small dollar donations, making an impact. We can see that happening here in Texas too. And it's just incredible. I mean, over 15,000 people have said this campaign matters, and it matters enough for me to put my money where my mouth is. And we're just so grateful.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Literally from almost every state in the United States, and I would imagine it is by now, every state in the United States has donated to this little Texas State House race because they believe in what we're doing. But we're also connecting to our stories in different ways. I'm an educator, so it's not uncommon for me to have educators especially connect to our campaign. I'm a former foster care child. And that is very important for a lot of folks in this country, social workers that are doing their best for me. And I so appreciate that. I had my first grade teacher reached out to me because she saw that I was running for office, and really experiencing that sort of national push is amazing. But truly, having resources is amazing, because in 2018, they were so scarce, and we were making the best that we could do, and goodness, what we could do in 108. We proved that we could do a lot with a little, And it certainly has made the argument now of saying we could do a whole lot more with a whole lot more help. And we're the campaign to get behind. Selena's campaign, Akilah's campaign. We are good candidates. We aren't just sitting in flippable seats, but we are accomplished women. And I think the real message is that what we're trying to we're trying to tell the country is this: there is a new face of Democratic leadership coming out of Texas right now. Right now. This is what it's going to look like. It's not just going to be Beto. It's not just going to be Castro. It's not just going to be Wendy Davis or Verona Escobar, all amazing people. There is a whole new generation that you can get behind now.
Ms. Basie, I want to turn to you. So you are new to the scene. You did not run in 2018. I'm curious, how much are you relying on outside help in your own race?
You mean like out of state?
Out of state, or the congressional race above you, all of that.
I will say this. When I signed up to run, I had no idea it was going to look like this. And it was going to be so much national attention onto the Texas State House at all. Going forward, a lot of people didn't even know who their state representatives were. Now you have people across the nation who know the state representative in North Dallas or somewhere in West Houston. And so, that's definitely something different. But, to say we're relying on out-of-state help, I'm just relying on the help that I can get. And what I see is that we talk about as out-of-state help is that we just have a message that is resonating across the country. And like Joanna was saying, and like Selena was saying, it's like, this is just this new phase where people look at us, and I heard that they see themselves, right? They see themselves in the campaigns that we're running, and they want to get behind it. And not only that, but if you look at the importance of the Texas State House and the national consequences that it is set to have in 2021 going forward, it makes sense that the entire nation is supporting a progressive state house that can reflect the values that they want to see across the United States as well. So I am really excited about the help that we're getting inside Texas, inside of our district, and outside of our state as well, because it is a local race. We're all running local races with very national consequences.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think it's worth mentioning there's been a sort of a conversation that for so many years, the funds that people raise for politics in Texas have often gone to other states to try to influence, what we know will be, sometimes conservative policies that make their way out of Texas to other states. And so, what we're seeing now is that because of the organization that's been had, the work that's been happening for really well over a decade here in the state, it's starting to come to fruition, and it's coming to fruition in all of these races. And for the first time, we're seeing the resources match that effort in a way that we just haven't seen before. I think it's important to say that, yes, while there are folks who are seeing the potential in Texas, Texans have seen the potential themselves all along.
And this is a question for all three of you. So in the best election year Texas Democrats at least had in decades, in 2018, Republicans won in the 3 seats that you each are running for. So what do you think makes 2020 different? And why do you think you can oust a Republican incumbent?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think one of the things that, Democrats are sometimes known for are being a little more enthusiastic during a presidential year than in midterms like we had in 2018. But if it's any indication just how enthusiastic they were in 2018, we're seeing 2020, like we mentioned before, turnout like never before. It doesn't hurt that the top of the ticket draws a lot of ire from people who are, Democrat, Republican, independent. And that motivates people to get to the polls as well. I know that there are also in a lot of cases, much like mine, competitive races up and down the ballot, right? We've got Wendy Davis, MJ Hager that are running these incredible races that are also highly competitive. And so I think that level of interest for campaigns throughout is going to be significant. And let's not forget how many new voters have registered in the state since then. There is a whole other part of the electorate that's never had an opportunity to vote in Texas before. And now that they've got the shot, now that they've got the chance and they've got a choice, I think we're going to see things start to change.
Ms. Basie, or Ms. Cattanach, sorry, whoever wanted to go in next on that.
Go for it, Joanna.
So I think it's important to also realize that in some cases, the incumbents had no challenger. No one had challenged my incumbent since 2014. And the spread was so big that it was intimidating to even think about running against an incumbent who, A, hadn't been challenged, who had a massive war chest, and where Democrats were losing, in this case, up to 20%. And that's not the best roll call to get someone to run for office sometimes. But what I think was really crucial and the big difference between 2018 and now was A, just simply running for office and putting your name on the ballot. And to run, in my case, as a true, socially progressive, liberal, democratic woman, and never once trying to be anything other than that. And to see the enthusiasm on the Democratic side really come out, I mean, that was very, very helpful for us, because why would you come out as a Democrat for something that is just a lighter shade of pale from the incumbent? I mean, why? That's important, that people have people they want to vote for, who they can count on to stand up for their values. And in our case as well, it was crucial that we get out the voting record of the incumbent. So many, A, didn't know who he was, but B, had no idea he was F-rated by Equality Texas or A-rated by the NRA, or had voted for or supported bathroom bills. I mean, that was shocking to a lot of people in this district to think, how can that be? This is Dallas. And that is something that I think has been an important part of our campaign now, is to really highlight that. And it's an easy way to highlight your differences as well.
Yes, well, like I said, like I am in a different position than these two amazing powerhouse women. But our seat, the Democratic nominee, who was Akilah Bacy in 2018, moved the needle to 47 votes last go around. Since then, we have registered thousands of people in the district, new people, and even what we see at the polls are people who will walk up and we're there. Okay, this is my first time voting in Harris County. Can you help me with my ballot, right? And so we're seeing that across the board. And so when we're looking at numbers, when we're looking at who we're targeting, we're looking at who to talk to, we realize that it's just like a slew of just young voters who are ready to get out there. And what we also see is that so many people, kind of to what Joanna was saying, is that are becoming disillusioned with the Republican Party in days of old. This idea that they're not moving forward with their ideas. It used to be this idea you championed, I guess, social conservatism. But now, we see that so much of what it is, and that's just disenfranchising already groups that are already vulnerable and prejudiced and discriminated against in our community. And I think that's a huge cultural shift that is moving towards being more encompassing, being more embracing and celebrating our differences across the board. And so I think that that's also something that we're seeing. Those old Republican fear-mongering lines are not sticking in the way that they used to. And so I think that that's extremely, extremely helpful for us. And we see when you have the top of the ticket who is doubling down on on those talking points, it's not moving in their favor. People are becoming more disgusted and turned away from it.
And Ms. Bacy, just following up, you had mentioned Akilah Bacy, who, as you mentioned, was in your position 2 years ago. Has he given you any pointers at all for running in the district, or has he told you why he decided not to run again in 2020?
Certainly, yes. Well, when I got into this race, we had had a conversation, and what he said is that when he had gone out into our district, and I guess it talks to what the suburbs are looking like across Texas now, is that, he said that this is a seat that needs to be held by a woman of color. This is not a seat that, a white male should be holding at this point in time, just by looking at the makeup of the district, by looking at who it is you're fighting to represent. And then he also told me, he said, I looked at your background, because we had a very spirited primary as well here. But he said, I looked at your background and the work that you've already done in the community before your name was out there makes you the person that I know will fight for this community. And so he immediately came out with a public endorsement, assisted financially as well. And not only that, but his former field director is now my field director. I said, if you got to 47, I feel like you could cross us over and get us over 50 more over. he's been very helpful, very enthusiastic, a huge supporter, and I am very grateful for the work that he has done, the trails that he has blazed in this district, and laid that groundwork so that, and even more so, groundwork and the foundation so that we can build and actually flip House District 138.
Got it. I have a question again for all three of you. So one of the main GOP attack lines across the state this fall has been about law enforcement, accusing Democrats of wanting to defund the police. I haven't seen any of you express support for that idea. Again, please correct me if I'm wrong. But in any case, how do you deal with that in your races? And Ms. Montoya, I'll start with you.
Yeah, I don't think that any of us have become strangers to falsehoods made about ourselves, our positions, or even our families. And, I think that just goes to show that when our Republican opponents feel like they have to deal in falsehoods, that they're running scared. And the thing is, fear should not be ruling these campaigns. It should be about the people in these districts. It should be about the issues. It should be about the policies. It should be about their voting records. And if they cannot defend their voting records and instead have to, just, I guess, sort of cookie cutter these negative types of attacks on every Democrat that's running, not just us, not just the 9 who are in flippable seats. I mean, almost every Democrat is being served with these kinds of attacks. I think that just goes to show that there's a distinct difference in the way that, we're running our campaign. There's a distinct difference in the way that we're connecting with people and, where our priorities are.
Mm. Ms. Basie?
I totally agree with what Selena said. And I actually, when I see these ads, Akilah wants to defund the police, I think, wow, you're talking to a former prosecutor who has seen the work up close and personal and the need for law enforcement. But in that, I've also seen the need for accountability for law enforcement as well. And, I think that there's absolutely, without question, room for us to have some criminal justice reform. But none of us are calling to, abolish the police or anything of that sort. That's silliness. It's again, that fear-mongering, those points that they say, we're just going to say to everyone, and to that this idea of like us all getting these same attack ads. It's so funny. We had a current state rep, Gina Kalani, in a neighboring district, and she got an attack ad, and we had mine, and literally it was take out my picture and stick hers in is what we see, and I'm like, wow, y'all can even find mail vendors to switch it up a little bit.
Wow.
But this is what we're getting, right? Because they know, and our polls show it their polls show it just like ours. One, it shows our numbers. But two, it shows the messages that stick. And they can't find these messages of us saying, oh, we want to defund the police and abolish the police, because we haven't said it. We've never ran on that. And that's not something that we are looking to do. But I do think it is extremely important that we're making sure we have a social justice system that works for everyone. And that when everyone gets into the system, they feel like their voice is being heard, or they have their day in court as well.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, so I echo what both Selena and Akilah have said. I'm part of the cookie cutter conservative ad program that's going around the state of Texas. And truly, at some point, you just sort of wonder, do these people even look at a poll to see what happens in districts like Dallas when you do that type of thing? Because it's not the consequence you want. We have had a lot of spirited discussion in Dallas, of course. Many people know that our chief of police has resigned her seat. That the city council has had and already passed the police budget in this city, and they did not defund the police in Dallas. It just goes to show how disconnected sometimes the main message is from what the reality is on the ground. And the reality is on the ground, Black Lives Matter everywhere. That's it. They do. And we have had multiple protests, like most of Texas, all over Dallas. There's a ongoing memorial in Dallas. They are attempting to rename one of the streets here after Botham Jean, who was killed by a police officer and who was convicted of that murder. And there's a real reality happening here in in this district that is really speaking to what is happening across the country, and simply assuming that the electorate agrees with you is not the reality. Simply taking funds from police associations, which is what the incumbent does in my case, and likely yours as well, to Selena and Akilah, and using that, and even using the images of officers in your ads, which campaigns here in the North Texas area are actively doing. It doesn't justify or really make the claim on the other side. I mean, the accusation is that we want to defund the police, but if we looked at the records of some of our incumbents, what exactly have they been doing with budgets? Police pensions in the Dallas area are a huge concern. I mean, we want to talk about really supporting the community. Let's look at some of those issues. But, for now, we're going to keep on the messaging that we know that works, and that we need a criminal justice system that works for everyone, that Black lives do matter, and that making sure that we can say that in a fair way, and then go down to Austin and pass legislation that matters, that deals with the issues that these protests have brought forward, like use of force. We have to have a discussion on what that looks like in Texas right now, and how it looks from department to department all across the state of Texas, including in my district, where we have 2 different police departments. And I think it's fair that we need to be having those types of discussions right now.
We have about 4 minutes left, so I want to ask you each one more question before we wrap up. If elected, what would be y'all's #1 priority in the state legislature? And Ms. Basie, I'll start with you.
Well, mine is as the work that I do when I do being a former prosecutor, doing defense work, working with our civil rights. It's going to be to work on our criminal justice system. It is going to be to make sure that we are putting laws in place that allow for accountability within our law enforcement. It's going to be to make sure that we are allowing that those who have, served their debts to society are properly reintegrated into society. That's going to be what I really focus on. I know that, it's really important that we focus on healthcare and education, but I know that so many people are going in, so many veterans are coming back to tackle that. So I'm thinking realistically, what is probably one of the areas that they might not already have that foothold, those plans are already just completely laid out on, and that's going to be my baby for my first session.
Ms. Montoya?
Yeah, I think we, as Akilah mentioned, have some great veterans who we're confident are going to be returning to the House, who are going to be leading the way on things like Medicaid expansion and equity in healthcare, as well as in our educational funding, making sure that that's protected as we enter into what's likely to be a significant deficit in our budget. So, when I look at areas where I've had the opportunity to serve and the opportunity to lead, where we could use some support, I think. That's particularly in women's health and reproductive health and justice, and ensuring that we're not only going to make sure that healthcare is accessible and affordable, but that we are making sure that those who are seeking care have a safe place to get that. We're looking right now at the possibility of a Supreme Court nominee taking a position, even potentially hearing positions on Roe v. Wade. And for people here in Texas and throughout the country, there's a lot of concern about that. And the bottom line is, as someone who is a mother, who is grateful for the opportunity to be a mother, it is incumbent upon every individual to make that choice for themselves, and to be able to have the support that they need from their doctor, from their family, from their faith leader, and from their community. And most importantly, from their representatives, to ensure that that opportunity, that ability to make that choice is protected.
And last but not least, Ms. Cattanach.
So I look so forward to returning to the veterans who've not had the votes to get their legislation even heard sometimes in committee. I look forward to joining the Democrats when we choose our new speaker and we choose new chair, men and women, and we choose new members of committees that will provide a balance in the House that has been needed for a long time. I am an educator, so of course education is a priority for me and a priority for this district, and I have promised and will keep that promise that I will bring enough apples for every single desk in the State House so that they remember the promises that they made in 2018 when many suddenly discovered that public education funding was a thing they should do, because those were promises, and we intend to keep them in the next session. I would love to join all of these conversations, of course, and support the legislation that either Selena or Akilah bring forward. But I am a former foster care child and would be one of only two to serve in the State House. In a foster care system that remains under judicial oversight that has never been fixed the way that was claimed even back in 2017. So I think that there's a real opportunity to provide a new voice in the State House and to say that if we have judicial orders that are not being met by the state, if the state is actively suing not to meet the measures to keep kids safe and kids remain unsafe in the foster care system, then there needs to be someone who will be a voice for these folks. There needs to be a former foster care child who can finally hold, foster care agencies accountable. And to be able to do that and to be able to be in the position to do that is just sort of the story of foster care, that you can go from being the kid in the back seat of a social worker's car at 3 years old to being 40 and sitting in the State House and asking questions about accountability and asking questions about caseloads and asking questions about safety and stopping efforts to privatize the foster care system and stopping legislation that bans gay families from adopting in Texas, like was passed in 2017. That's exactly why I'm running for office, to be a voice that hasn't been heard in the State House. And it's time all of us were heard, because we really do represent Texas. We really do have the qualifications to be there. We are the new leadership to be there. And I think what you're going to see in the next legislative session is some amazing women asking some amazing conversations. And I will promise you this, I will bring all the Lysol all of y'all need, because I've said this many, many times. These fools walking around thinking they don't need to wear masks, thinking they can walk around and infect folks. No, I don't think so. If my kindergartner who is 5 years old can learn to wear a mask, everyone in the State House should be able to do that as well. And if you cannot, I have a very large spray of a Lysol can, and I am not afraid to use it, because we are staying safe and we are passing good legislation and we are going to be responsible representatives.
Got it. And with that, we are out of time. Thanks to everyone for tuning in, and thanks again to our three panelists, Ms. Montoya, Ms. Cattanach, and Ms. Basie. Finally, a reminder to the viewers that if you want to follow the latest election news with our weekly 2020 newsletter, go to trib.it/2020 to subscribe. That's it for me. Everyone, thank you so much and have a great weekend.
Thank you.
Thank you.